Preservation Hall. Now that's where you'll find all the greats, the fellas that's blowing in there today, the old timers that I played with when I was young.
The room has spirits in it. The room has this energy from years of people creating the vibe.
My parents got to New Orleans in 1961. They happened upon a parade in the French Quarter that led them back to an art gallery where there were these informal jam sessions taking place. Out of those jam sessions grew this idea for Preservation Hall.
It was very difficult to hear New Orleans jazz in New Orleans a few years ago. So we rented an old art gallery and began Preservation Hall.
And you wouldn't think that a small room like this can be intimidating or can have this much energy. Standing in here by yourself can send chills up your spine.
First time I walked into this room, it's incredibly humbling. So many lives have passed through these doors. These walls have many, many stories.
It's like a pot that has flavor in it. You put some roux in a pot that has flavor, got the crust on the side. It got that thing where when you eat the food, you got some flavors in there that you didn't even put in there, but you like it for it.
If one was to come from far away as Mars, I would take them right down to Preservation Hall.
Hurricane Katrina is turning in the Gulf of Mexico.
This is not a test. There's a major hurricane.
80% of New Orleans is underwater. Katrina's departure was just the beginning.
Preservation Hall was physically closed for about 18 months. I didn't know how we were going to survive. I just knew that we would. Part of the answer was being out on the road, becoming ambassadors of New Orleans music. That was really what kept us alive during that time. It took a long time to bring life back into Preservation Hall. What was amazing is everybody wanted to come. That was when we met Jim James. That led to us going out on tour with My Morning Jacket.
Down in Big Kids Bar.
And that was the first time that we ever played in front of audiences that size before. That was the beginning of the next chapter in our life.
Keeping these old traditions alive and infusing it with modern spirits and modern power, it never will be old, it never will be dated.
Working with Pres Hall is always a gas. There's a lot of spirit, a lot of history. It's a real New Orleans institution. They're collaborations of late, of the past few years, are really creative and unusual, and it keeps the music alive. They're reinventing it in any given moment, which keeps it interesting, keeps people coming.
To play in a room like this with all this history and within a city that I love is very beautiful.
You can imagine people meeting from different backgrounds or tribes, communicating through their instruments. In New Orleans has been a kind of nexus of lots of cultures coming together.
Our next guests are New Orleans jazz pioneers and Grammy Award-winning bluegrass legends. Please welcome the Preservation Hall Jazz Band and the Del McCoury Band.
We have played with country and western music, we played bluegrass, still the same 7 notes. If we have a musical conversation, we cancel our complications. Let's sit down and talk about it.
The program they're doing for kids now to keep the tradition alive, this place just gives. It just gives and gives and gives.
When you teach a child something and they come back and play it for you, the award is so great, all the money in the world couldn't pay for that.
All year long, the Preservation Hall Foundation does music outreach programs all across the country. In fact, we do them all over the world, inviting people into something that you all are very familiar with, the universe that is New Orleans. We probably performed more concerts in the Bay Area than we have in anywhere else in the world. There's something about the spirit and the soul of San Francisco that's very much like New Orleans.
Preservation Hall's clearly an inspiration for SF Jazz in establishing the SF Jazz Center. Pres Hall looks at jazz's evolution and its growing and looking forward. And this is a point of view that is strongly shared here at SF Jazz.
A responsibility that we all have to our musical heritage is to not only pay respect to the past by carrying on a tradition, but also allowing our own personal tastes to influence the tradition so that it can become something new.